The QMC Board and Collar Series for EMS professionals welcomes you to Excuse My Medic, the podcast version of an MCI with Gary Harvat, Chuck Humphrey, and Ed Marasco. Excuse My Medic takes a unique look at today's emergency medical service with news and information, opinionated discussions, lively talk, sporadic jabs, and even a few belly laughs from our world of emergency medical services. Excuse My Medic is brought to you by Quick Med Claims, a national leader in emergency medical service revenue cycle management and reimbursement consulting. Now, hang on to the bench seat and tighten your lap belt as these old guys from EMS past take you on a Code 3 ride without touching the brakes. You've had the disclaimer, and if you're still brave enough to stick it out, let's get started. Take it away, guys.
Well, good day, everyone. My name is Gary Harvat, and welcome to another informational, sometimes scary edition of Excuse My Medic, or as we refer to it as EM2. So we've got a great program today, and for some reason, some crazy reason, we actually have a guest who's coming back for a second time. Now, I don't know about you, Ed and Chuck, but most of our guests are a flash in the pan. One time and they go, no, not coming back here again. But Heather Harris, by the way, Harris is a new name for Heather because since last time, Heather has got married. So congratulations to Heather.
Congratulations.
Joining us here today. Yeah, we're happy and excited for you. And I actually met Heather's, what at that time was her fiance back in October, and just a great guy. So really glad for you, Heather. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I hope you guys have a great life together. You know, Chuck recently got married a couple years ago. His wife puts roofs on houses, shovels the driveway, changes the oil in the car.
You're not allowed to talk to Sean.
I think last week, yeah, I think last week she was doing an overhaul on the lawnmower, getting it ready for spring. Chuck sits with his feet up or does these EM2 periodically. Other than that, oh yes, and he goes bowling. But we're not going there today. We're not going there today. So of course, it's good to have all of you here. Ed, how are things down south with you?
It's fantastic. We're living the good life. But we were just talking before we got on. We have a family from Pittsburgh in for the week, so it'll be euchre till the wee hours of the morning tonight.
Oh my!
Can't wait.
Oh my! Well, that's good. And Chuck is doing dinner and spit. What's it called, Chuck?
pitch and pizza.
Oh, pitch. I'm sorry, I misheard. So
it's the double P night. Yes,
pizza and pitch.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
that's it.
As I'm not really familiar. This is a card game, right?
That is correct. Yeah,
Okay.
And usually it's accompanied by imbibements of flowing nature and general discussion about how many pills we take. You know, we're at that age now. You know.
Yeah. Don't you find that we went out to dinner a couple weeks ago with some old friends. I swear the first hour of our conversation wasn't about anything else except poor eating habits, what your PCP has said, and somehow even before we got into dinner, somehow we digressed into bowel habits when we needed to cut that.
No.
We needed to cut that really short.
Yes.
But what has happened to us?
Well, we're former EMS in the day when health wasn't really a major EMS concern. And Heather's going to talk to us today about some things that EMS people can do to change that. So the younger generation here, thank goodness, is not going to follow in our healthy, unhealthy habit footsteps.
Yes. Amen.
And if anybody needs to talk about some unhealthy eating habits, we all could probably make. But Chuck, give us one of those crazy recipes that you use to mix up there at home. One of those concoctions. What was that? Like oatmeal and ketchup or something like that?
No.
It was
Cottage cheese with maple syrup. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's
and
pretty disgusting.
I did make my famous salmon surprise this week. So that's toasted bread with tzatziki sauce, Greek yogurt sauce, with a smoked salmon, cheese, and a soft boiled egg on top of it all. it's really very delicious. Doesn't sound appealing, but those are the things that I do now, to experiment in trying to feed myself while my wife is working.
Yeah. Hey,
Okay,
Chuck, could
G,
you send me
I'm
the
gonna-
recipe for that, please?
Yes, I
Yeah.
will. Yes.
Yeah,
He's
I
gonna
want
have to put that on the menu at Rodney's.
Yeah,
for next
exactly.
Thursday.
We could maybe see if we can get that on the spring menu that hasn't come out yet. Yeah, I'm sure that'll do great for the patrons coming in. That'll kill off the
And
bar
I'm sure
crowd.
Heather's going to want that to share with her yoga friends as well.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, Chuck, you were talking about before we so rudely interrupted. You're talking about Heather and her yoga. So do you want to kind of introduce this for us, please? And we'll let Heather take it away. But hey, it's really good to see all of you. Heather, I already apologize, but thank you for joining us once
Thank
again.
you. Thank you
Well, for
inviting me
those of
back.
you that don't know Heather, Heather is the executive director, I have that correct, of the Ambulance Association of Pennsylvania, which is by and large the best state association in the entire 50 states. So
Oh,
kudos.
thank you.
They just do such a great job. And
They
so
do.
we've gotten to know Heather over the years. And when Heather's not advocating for all of us EMS folks, she is teaching yoga classes. And part of that, as I understand, Heather, is yoga to increase the fitness levels of folks like me who did not have someone like you back in the day when we got calls and would dip into McDonald's and eat massive amounts of cheeseburgers. So tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about how you're enriching not only EMS on a state level through advocacy, but how you're trying to help us all stay very fit and trim.
Okay, so that's like a big introduction
Big
there. So
category,
I'm
yeah.
going to narrow it down just a little bit. Yoga is a passion, of course, along with EMS and other things, but yoga is very good for you for a lot of reasons. And there are a lot of buzzwords out there when it comes to mental health, well-being, meditation, mindfulness, all those types of things that are all a part of a yoga practice. And so there is a program out there called Yoga for First Responders, and I have been trying to get in with them to do some training, but I did have some training with a woman who has her master's in psychology, and it's yoga for PTSD, stress, anxiety, and depression. And a lot of it centered around the vagus nerve and dealing with that fight, flight, or freeze. So yoga is a nice way to, if you think about it, and I know a lot of people look at it that it's just stretching or it's, I'm going to twist up like a pretzel, and it's none of those things. It can be those things if that's what you want, but there are different types of yoga practices that appeal to different types of personalities. For me, when I started doing yoga, it was to actually quit smoking. And so my first night of yoga was the last night that I smoked. And I had done a lot of research because they connect. Yoga in Sanskrit means to unite, and it means to unite the mind, the body, and the breath. And so then there are other terms in yoga like pranayama, which is breathing techniques. And so prana means breath or life force, where yama means control. So if you control your breath, you slow it down, you slow down the mind, it actually helps you to kind of release that fight, flight, or freeze.
Very interesting.
And when I first started doing yoga, I was doing a vinyasa practice. And if you think vinyasa that I like to practice, and I do teach one of these classes, it's kind of like a runner or a cyclist. So it's like a dynamic flow and you're constantly moving. But then I also teach a yin class, which you will actually hold a pose in a seated posture or a supine posture for 3 to 5 minutes. And so it helps to extend the fascia, and it's a nice balance for those that are very active with EMS professionals because they do a lot of repetitive movement. That yin practice is very good, and then the vinyasa practice is also good, or even just a slow flow or a gentle movement where you take your muscles in different ways. It's not continually getting in and out of a vehicle or lifting. It is, extra movements, twisting the spine, the different flexions with the spine, and that also helps to relax the vagus nerve. So that type of yoga is wonderful. There's 8 limbs of yoga. If you think about yoga as a tree, So there are different things. Meditation is a branch, controlling different things. When we talked about the pranayama, controlling the breath, that's another limb. There are other different types of ethical practices, like do no harm. I mean, everybody is familiar with that, with the physicians and, EMS, it's do no harm, but it's do no harm to others as well as yourself. So as you're flowing through the practice, it's not about comparing yourself to someone else, because everybody has different injuries and anatomy, little tweaks. And, so putting your foot behind your head, I'm never going to put my foot behind my head, only because I'm not built that way.
Yeah.
So, and like some of the other dynamic practices, because of surgeries and injuries that I've had, I won't be able to do them again, but I still have a very robust practice, and anybody can. Any body is a yoga body. And so you don't have to twist up in a pretzel. You don't have to touch the floor. There's so many different props that you can use. But yoga is so good for you because it helps you feel good, and it kind of sneaks up on you. Like you start doing your practice and you're like, yeah, and they're like, yeah, come back next week and keep coming back. And, before you know it, it becomes a part of your routine, and it becomes something that your body actually will tell you that you need.
Heather,
I don't know if you did you see, and I'm pretty sure you did. What was it, last week or week before, that OSHA has come out with some of their new guidelines for first responders,
Yeah,
and
we
it's
have
going to become an OSHA issue. Are you able to speak and then how that ties together? Because I was thinking as I'm listening to you, maybe not me because I'm at the autumn, if not the December of my street experience, but for the younger folks listening in EMS, this is something they're going to have to pay attention to that we didn't have to worry about in our day. Are you able to speak to that at all?
Well, I can't speak about the OSHA requirements. It is actually 600 pages, and the deadline, that's the proposed rule. The deadline for comments is May the 6th. We have Scott Moore, who is the AAA consultant. He's actually coming to our reimbursement conference on May 13th, and he will actually be talking about this. So I think once things have shaken out, then we can probably talk about it. But I do know mental health, we have been bringing up the issue about mental health and wanting it to be covered for EMS providers. So I think one of the organizations that I had participated with was because a lot of times EMS and fire and police don't want to talk about any shortcomings. They are the heroes, and they don't want to admit that there was something wrong, and they don't want to use the EAP program or have it reflect badly on them. So then they can search for other resiliency tools that they can use. And so yoga and mindfulness through the yoga for not yoga for first responders, it was Heroes Are Human. It was a campaign that I did, but we did 12 days of different resiliency tools. So I think people need to be aware that there are tools out there. My classes, by the way, are online on Tuesday mornings and Thursday mornings.
Oh.
But if I do get requests for anybody who wants to do yoga for EMS professionals, I will never charge them for. Because I think it is such a great tool, and EMS, of course, is my passion.
Sure. Heather,
Along with
so
yoga.
while you're talking about this, if we do have any first responders interested, what would be the best means of contacting you?
Sure. My personal email address is hsharar1023@gmail.com. And then if you just put yoga in the subject line, I will be happy to talk to you.
Great.
So Heather, I learned a ton here in just 5
Me too.
minutes.
Yes, me
Oh,
too.
good.
Me
You
too.
know, if I'm a first responder and I want to go someplace to get more of the overview, more detail, you mentioned the tree and the limbs. Is there some places, or a website or someplace where I can go to read up and learn a little bit more about the various branches?
Sure. There are several different types of resources. The Yoga Alliance is, like, we talk about NREMT being that's where you get your testing done, and that's kind of the certifying body. Well, yoga professionals, we also have a certifying body. which is the Yoga Alliance. And I think it's yogaalliance.org or yogaalliance.com. But you can find me there. You can find me there listed. It's still under my previous name, but there are definitely a lot of resources there. You can find things on YouTube. There are lots of different avenues. Ayurveda, which is the sister science to yoga, it's called the science of life. It's how you fuel your body, what you eat, when you eat, time of year, time of life. There's like a whole thing to it. So there are lots of resources out there, but if somebody's interested in something particular, I can actually refer them to a book. I can refer them to a website, because there really are a lot of resources out there.
And you said something interesting, that there's actually a certification. So if I'm looking
There
for
is.
a new class, I should be asking that question, or determining whether the instructor is certified.
Right. So it is RYT, which is Registered Yoga Teacher. And so there are 200-hour, 500-hour, then you get to EYRT, which is somebody who's been a practitioner and teacher for many, many years. I am an RYT 500. So I have the additional training.
Wow.
Thanks, COVID.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
that's fascinating. It really
Yeah,
is.
you know, as most folks know, we do this program for the most part pretty much unrehearsed, and you know, I think we kind of hit Heather with this just prior to starting the recording here today, and so
That's okay.
that's very interesting. I mean, I could tell you got Ed and mine and Chuck's attention with this. Now,
I know you didn't even interrupt me. I thought for sure you'd say something,
well,
but no, that's okay.
give Chuck time here. He can probably incorporate this into bowling somehow, but give us some time. No, the question about the yoga for first responders, is this an actual, for lack of a better word, certified class, Heather, or is this just a program somebody put together and gave it that title?
So I think I am not as familiar with it. I have reached out several times to try to get more information. I know that they started out with fire, because on their website, there are a lot of people in turnout gear. And so for me, working with EMS professionals, I'm not going to ask you to put on your turnout gear, because I want you to take off your EMS hat or your fire hat or whatever it is. I want you to be the person behind that. But the Yoga for First Responders actually is a certified program. And so there are other like psychologists who have gotten into like the whole vagus nerve and moving it so that you can start to relax. And there are specific poses that I know the Yoga for First Responders course does incorporate into their teachings. So that's also what we use for the PTSD and the stress and all that. So there are a gazillion different yoga poses, because there are a gazillion different combinations of what you can do with your body.
Interesting. So I would imagine, as people listen to this, I am certain there's some hulky guy out there, if that's the correct term, who's saying, I don't need that. But you know, this profession creeps up on you without you knowing.
Right.
And both mentally and physically. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine last night, and you know, basically an old EMS guy like myself, and we don't go up and down steps like we used to. And that's primarily because we lifted and did things wrong in those early years, and now we're all paying the price. So I, like you, Heather, cannot put my leg behind my neck. And I struggle to put one foot in front of the other, with not sounding funny, but some days it's actually really
Right.
really tough. And I feel that
Right.
as I age here, and you know, you wonder what I'll be like or what we'll be like 10 years from now. So I find this very interesting. So, you know, especially the mind and body thing, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to something like this, you know, I recognize that there's probably a large majority that are like, oh, I'm good. But, you know, you've got to take care of yourself in so many different ways now, because you want to live a full life. And at some point, you're going to step out of this field and want to enjoy your retirement or another trade or profession down the road. You can't end up being crippled. And if this helps especially with what we hear today in society with the mental side of this job, and it helps with the physical. In my mind, that is a win-win. And it's something that, please,
Absolutely.
we ask you today to pay attention to. Heather, this was very informative. So, thank you.
I could talk about it for an
Yeah.
hour, even
Yeah,
2 hours. You know, we
Well-
can get into Ayurveda and how you fuel your body too. I mean, it's all, but for
Mhm.
instance, with the walking, I actually had a conversation with one of my board members the other day, and he's like, I'm walking 3 to 4 miles a day, and I wake up and my hips are so sore. And I said, that's
Mhm.
because it's a repetitive movement. And
Yep.
so then your body starts to tighten. And so with
Mhm.
yin yoga, when you are, you know, you're laying on your back, and so you bring your knees up into your chest and you let them both fall over to the side. So you have that external rotation and the internal rotation that your body doesn't get when you're walking like
Sure.
this.
Sure.
So that's just one example.
Wow.
Really interesting.
Yeah,
Very,
fantastic.
very good. I'm blown away. I think this is something that we need to talk more about. I'd like to see, boy, Heather, it would be great to have you speak at a conference on this.
Sure.
I bet you'd have a room full of people. How many ended up taking part at the end of the day? Who's going to say? But you know, part of it is just letting people know that's out there. I mean, up till 10 minutes ago, I mean, I don't know. I was kind of thinking you sit in the corner with your legs crossed and you hum. And again, I'm not being
Well, you can do
funny.
that
I'm
too.
not trying to be funny. Well, you
Right.
don't want to hear me hum. I can't carry a tune in a bucket. But my point is, like, you know, there's some definite therapeutic effects to this that can
Absolutely.
help you not only today, but tomorrow, and of course, down the road. So thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank
We're
you for
gonna use you again, but we're gonna try to change gears here for a second. So there's been some changes as far as Medicaid goes,
Yes. Mhm.
and I think it's a great thing
It is.
for us. And I'm not going to steal your thunder here, but if we could segue from yoga, I don't know how you properly do this, to Medicaid payments.
Talk about
I'd
mental
appreciate it if you
health.
We're
could.
going from
Yeah.
fueling the body to fueling the bank account. Is that?
Yeah.
Bingo.
There you
Yeah.
Very
go.
well stated, Ed. Very well.
There you
That's
go.
we have Ed here for color. He's like the Tony Romo of EM2. So,
Oh,
All right.
very good.
Knife
All right.
on my chest.
Thanks for joining us, Ed. We won't need you anymore today. That was enough right there. But anyway,
Right.
good
So
enough.
medical assistance has typically been since for the last 43, 44 years, it has been typically the least the
Favorable.
least pay. Yeah, I mean they're the payer of last resort and they usually pay the least, I should say
Yeah.
that. And so for the last 18 years that I have worked for the Ambulance Association, we have been working towards getting that reimbursement increased. And so in 2014, we had our first increase, and it would have been the third increase that we have ever had since the payments started for EMS. And then 2 years ago, we were able to get it up to where it was about 80% of Medicare. And then the change that went into effect January of this year actually took medical assistance up to the higher of the rates, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid. So, and of course, Medicare is higher, except in the case of non-emergent ALS, I think medical assistance was higher. So that's why it says the higher of the two.
Mhm.
And luckily for us, when we tried to get this several times, and it started with mileage. And I'll go back to December 29th of 2014. There was a Pennsylvania bulletin issued. December the 29th now when probably everybody is on vacation for the holidays. And it said that medical assistance would pay for all loaded miles minus the first 20. So originally, before that, they paid port to port minus 20 miles. So what they were doing was they were changing it to loaded miles minus the first 20. So basically, they took away the mileage reimbursement benefit at all, completely.
Completely.
Yeah.
Right. So we had been fighting for 9 years, going back to meeting with them. They said, unless there was an access to care issue, we were not going to get the mileage change. We were not going to get a medical assistance increase. And So then we talked about the provider assessment program that I know other states do. And so when we met with DHS, we talked about that. And then we also talked about taking the amount from the fire and EMS grant that is the EMS portion, which is only 12%. Fire gets 87%, but that's a story for another day. But that 12%, moving it over into medical assistance, so then they could pull down the federal match. And so DHS said, that's a scheme, and Medicare is caught on to that, and they'll never agree to that. And they have really been obstructionist for the last 9 years whenever it came to updating the policies. Like the payment policies for EMS includes VASC certification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
away,
just,
which went away
Oh
about
my
when Gary and
goodness.
I and
yeah,
Ed
1980s.
started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So we took the payment policy, and we took the EMS Act and put the language in there. We did the red lines, and here's an updated policy for you. Here's everything that you need. Well, it's going to take us a while, and him haw. So there's that, which is still on our legislative agenda. But trying to work with DHS is very difficult. So we've had to go the legislative route the last couple of times. And Representative Kauser from up in Northwest PA, he was incredibly instrumental in getting us the 2 previous medical assistance increases. And so with trying to get the mileage corrected, Representative Borowski from Southeastern PA, she had a piece of legislation she introduced that would have paid for all loaded miles. And then it went over to the Senate. Senator Brooks over in the Senate had a piece of legislation that would have paid loaded miles minus the first 5. And so we had talked to her. She was willing to change it and amend it so that it was all loaded miles. And so when Representative Borowski's bill was over in the Senate, they attached the fiscal code to it, and there was some school voucher things in there. So when it went back to the House, the Democrats didn't agree with this, so then it died in rules. So then there was Senator Brooks's bill. I think that was the bill that came over the second time. But there was a second bill that came over, and then that actually went into Rules Committee, and that actually died too. So then the bill that actually was passed was Act 15 of 2023, and that was Senator Pittman. He kept adding and he kept trying. So, third time is the charm. So that actually went over to the House, and they actually did approve it. And so, like I said, it says that they will pay the greater of the 2 rates, Medicare or Medicaid, and they would pay for all loaded miles from mile 1.
Yeah.
So
So I'm going to jump in here because we do have listeners, Heather, from Quick Make Claims serves 39 different states. So
Sure.
I just want everybody to understand that if you're listening, you're outside of Pennsylvania. This is strictly Pennsylvania, but we have such a large clientele in Pennsylvania. We wanted to focus on this because there have been questions about this because there's been a delay. And so the reason why we wanted Heather to speak to this because our clients are asking, there's confusion and we're not sure what to tell them. I'm sure you're not quite sure what to tell them yet, but you can shed some light on that delay. And so everybody else knows just what Heather's been talking to. You may be in a state where they have tackled this thing 10 years ago, and really Pennsylvania and New Jersey were 2 of the worst underfunded Medicaid payment for EMS across the entire country. I think New Jersey's still behind Pennsylvania. So why we're focusing on this is we really had to catch up. So understand, folks, if you're, your client and you're listening somewhere outside of Pennsylvania, we apologize for being so Pennsylvania centric today, but it's a fight. When you talk about the Medicaid recovery program, this has been something that's going on, nationwide, and it's really helped to narrow that gap. But I'll go back here now that everybody understands we're focusing on Pennsylvania. What is the delay and where are we at now? Can you just explain that a little bit?
Sure. So with the change to the mileage, Pennsylvania had to file a state plan amendment. So every year, medical assistance, DHS, has to file a state plan. And then anytime they amend it, So, and as I understand it, it was the payment methodology, because the state plan originally said they would pay loaded miles minus 20.
And they're filing that with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS.
Right. And this was
Because this is still federal dollars administered by the state, correct?
Correct. So, the change took effect January 1st of 2024, and DHS could not file a state plan amendment until the first day of the first month of the change. So they couldn't file it until January the 1st. We met with DHS in December, on December the 13th. They actually issued a Pennsylvania bulletin that was incorrect. So we had meetings behind the scenes. We met with the IT folks. We met with DHS. We have had numerous conversations trying, because originally when we talked to DHS and we talked about this piece, they said it only applied to mileage, and they were going to file a state plan and that it would be all those miles. And we were like, no. It also includes an increase in the reimbursement level. And they're like, well, I'm not too sure about that. So we reached out to House members and legislative staff. They reached out to appropriations. We reached out to Senator Pittman. We reached out to Senate staff. They reached out to Senate appropriations. They went to the governor's office. Governor's office went back to DHS. So these are like all the things happening behind the scenes. And so then we were like, okay, well, when are you going to file the state plan amendment? When we met with them on December the 13th, and will you send out a corrected Pennsylvania bulletin? And they said, yes. Well, will you share that with us? And they said they would. So I said, whatever you do, please don't issue the Pennsylvania bulletin on December the 29th. Guess when they issued it? December the 29th. So,
Shocker.
I know. And it was incorrect. So we had to go back and say, you know what, this isn't correct. And so we did send out some notifications to our members. And January the 12th, we sent out a notice just letting people know that once the rates are done, it will be retroactive to January the 1st, but they needed to examine their billing rates to make sure they needed to go against the Pennsylvania bulletin that was published in December the 29th until the new one is done, because you couldn't bill at the other rate, because then they're going to think that they were just done. So there's a whole bunch of things, and we had Paige Wolfberger-Worth review it to make sure that we weren't, out of line with legalities. So there was that. And then, whoops, I just hit a button. Sorry. Got papers on my laptop again.
Yeah. So Heather, a question. So has the plan amendment been filed, the correct one?
Yes. So the state plan amendment was filed on February the 5th. And so CMS has 90 days in which to approve it. And we can't imagine that they wouldn't approve it, because there are other states that they pay from loaded miles 1. Right. And that's what Medicare's rule is. You pay loaded miles. So fingers crossed. And then on February the 6th, the updated Pennsylvania bulletin was sent to the governor's office for review. And so we have been told on February the 24th, next Friday, well,
next
Saturday, because the Pennsylvania bulletin comes out Saturdays, but it's published on Friday. So in the next Pennsylvania bulletin will be the updated rates for MA.
So the anticipation is they're going to be equal to Medicare.
Right.
Okay.
Right. The higher of the two, which
is a huge win. It's an enormous win
Monster
in dollars.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, folks, if Pennsylvania Ambulance Services, when you're listening, are you listening to all of the work that Heather and the AAP have done that none of us individually can do? So I'm going to give you a little plug, Heather.
Oh, thank you.
If you are not a member of the AAP, for what it is per year to be a member to support this advocacy, you got to sign up, guys. Like, seriously, who could do this on our own? I recently tried to get a hold of one of our local legislators to have a conversation with him about something that was near and dear to my heart, and I couldn't get 15 minutes with the guy, which he's not getting my vote next time, and I just signed somebody else's petition to take his place. And I don't mind telling you that it's impossible to get in front of these people. And then nonetheless have conversation and meetings with DHS, which is kind of like having a meeting with Vladimir Putin right now. I mean, seriously, so kudos. And folks, we need to support the AAP. If you're out there listening and you're a service who, whatever the pittance dollars it is to be a member, it is worth every penny. And I think you guys can agree with me.
Yeah, and Chuck, if I could add, for those of our colleagues and listeners who are outside of Pennsylvania, it's fascinating, very instructive to see what the AAP and the agencies had to go through to get to this point, and then to make sure it's right. And so I think there was a bunch of learning points in there. One is the communication, the relationships, the longstanding relationship. You mentioned Pittman and some of the other legislators that have helped us before on these kind of issues. Those relationships are so important, and they're cultivated over time, and the credibility that the AAP has with the staff at the legislators' offices, but also, paying attention, reading, being engaged, because things don't always happen. And we're seeing this on the federal level, with the NSA and other issues, the VA reimbursement issue that Heather and her team are also tracking from a PA perspective, which is a national issue. So very important that you're engaged with your ambulance association in the state and otherwise. So AAA, AAMS if you're on the air side, ACT if you're on the air side. Very important to be engaged and be a part of the process, because you can just, from the last 5 minutes, tell how detail oriented Heather and the team have been to get this thing over the finish line, and fingers crossed, we're just about there.
Yep, just about
Well,
there.
thank you.
And I don't know, Heather, do you know, I had read somewhere and I can't remember the figure, what the total dollar amount equates to with the increase?
Well, so here's the funny thing. Trying to get dollar amounts from the state is difficult, because EMS is stuck in a transportation, like the education transportation benefit is included in the same line item as EMS, which is very outdated. But they estimated that it would be 25 million, and then I heard 30 million, and so I'm not, because they didn't have the numbers correct, and they didn't reach out to us to figure out what it would be. So I can't give you a definitive answer, just like I don't want to say definitively that they're going to pay us $13.20 per mile, because that's the way it came out in the first bulletin, but I don't know if that's the way it's going to be. And
the other piece of this, Heather, is just so everybody's listening, if fee for service hasn't caught up, we know that the managed care organizations haven't even been notified, because they can't. They have. Oh, good. Fill us in on that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So, Geisinger, Highmark, Health Partners, and United will automatically be reprocessing claims. AmeriHealth and Keystone will also automatically be reprocessing claims, but they did note that some ambulance providers have custom rates, so they have to redo contracts.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then the UPMC noted that if a provider did not bill at or equal to the adjusted rate, they would need to resubmit the claims. And we're waiting to hear on Community Health Choices and how they have been notified. So yes, we are working on that.
Shameless plug for those of us that are retired. Ed, you're directly still involved. The folks at QMC have done a great job in collaborating together on behalf of the clients to stay on top of these reimbursements. So there's been a regular working group that works behind the scenes. If claims aren't paid correctly, they're being reviewed on a regular basis. I was part of that conversation. So for our clients that are listening, rest assured that you'll get every penny, because the team at QMC has done a good job in segmenting those claims and then going back and reviewing them, and whatever has to be done, whether they're going to automatically pay. If not, the appeal process will be in effect, and you'll get your money. And that's again a kudos to all the working members of the ops team at QMC.
Good point, John. Good point.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that. And Heather, I appreciate, I've made at least 2 or 3 phone calls to you to get an update as we've tried to stay on top of this. And so you're always willing to pick up the phone and
absolutely
have a conversation. And so on both fronts, yoga, reimbursement, thank you. I know on behalf of everybody across the Keystone State, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you do see his name appear on the phone, I'm okay if you don't pick up the phone.
That's my job. That's why I'm here.
I might ask you to join a bowling team, but you know.
Oh, I don't know. I never do that.
And anyway,
Yoga for
Heather,
bowlers, maybe, you know, we could
Yeah, right.
Well, we could do some hand things. Yeah.
I don't know. I find myself these days, I'm just trying not to tear an ACL playing pickleball, which is the next thing we're doing these days. So I'm thinking, I was taking notes during the yoga thing. I'm thinking I need to, it's not repetitive movement, but there's a lot of, sometimes body parts are going one way and the other way at the same time. Not good.
oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Please excuse the pregnant pause while I just contemplate what has just been said here.
You're an
Anyway. So again, Heather, once again, thank you very much for that information. And as I'll echo Chuck's sentiments, and thank you for all you do for the Commonwealth here, the EMS providers here, and of course, all those folks who are listening. You're looking at a dedicated servant here, and I hope in each of the other 49 states, you all have great people like we do here in Pennsylvania, heading up your association. So Heather, thank you again.
Thank you very much. You guys are
Quite
very
welcome. Chuck, you wanted to, you had a couple things that you wanted to talk about today as far as just newsworthy things. And so I'm just going to turn it back over to you, if you would, please.
Well, you know, typically, guys, we have a little fun in this, but I'm gonna bring it to seriousness here because throughout my career in EMS and which is now 38 years, it's hard to believe. It blows my mind. But the last almost 25 being in EMS billing, I have run across some wonderful people who I've worked very closely with over decades as clients, and two of them, I'm sad to say, over the past year have left the EMS community and left us a big hole. And you know, Heather, it's fitting that you're here with us today because when I joined EMS, as I'm sure the other guys here, this was largely a guy's thing. You know, I remember back at Berwick Area Ambulance, where I started, which is now part of Geisinger EMS, the idea of women being part of our organization was a debate. And that's a long story, but thankfully we saw the light. But two ladies south of the Mason-Dixon line who I have worked with for many years have passed, and I just wanted to pay tribute. So Linda Dusa, Linda and her husband were EMS in Maryland for many, many years, part of the Abingdon Fire Company in Harford County. Linda died suddenly in April. And the tribute, I have to tell you, the online tribute and the local tribute paid to Linda, lowering the flags across the entire county. Just a wonderful memorial service attended by literally hundreds and hundreds of area firefighters down in that part of Maryland. She was an instructor. She was EMS captain for over nearly 2 decades. You know, one of the first paramedics to ride, had affected EMS policy in Maryland across the state, working together with the medical director, the state medical director down there. She and her husband, Bill, had just really laid the groundwork for what is now modern EMS in Harford County. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't pause to just remember and I know that the Abingdon Fire Company just named an award, a Lifetime Achievement Award in her name, honoring her posthumously for the first recipient of that award. And the mourning even today of her loss has been great. And then just a few weeks ago, we lost Karen Mott at the Waterwitch Fire Company in Port Deposit, Maryland. Now, Port Deposit, Maryland is a very small community, but a large contributor to Cecil County's EMS. And Karen, if you knew Karen was just so much fun. In fact, because Waterwitch is the name of the company, she once a year would celebrate at Halloween and also celebrate their anniversary as a company. She became the Water Witch. Literally, there are pictures of her standing by apparatus, standing by the ambulance, dressed in full witch garb, one of which was on a motorcycle, and just the fun. But But when it got time for seriousness, literally the ambulance captain joined 1987, part of that organization. And so I just pause, and I know, Ed, you're going to bring up something that's near and dear to your heart, the National EMS Memorial. But these two ladies, groundbreaking to what was modern EMS, and definitely sorely missed, hard to replace. But I had to take a minute because many times I would pick up the phone when I first started working in Maryland, which I was a Pennsylvania EMS guy, and things at that point were very different across state lines. And when I started working down there, I remember doing documentation training, going into a fire company down there, and started talking about how we do documentation in Pennsylvania, and they were ready to throw stuff at me. Like, who is this Yankee? Who is this Yankee coming down here telling us what to do? And it was large in part, I knew that I had to develop some relationships and learn how things were different down below that imaginary line that separates our two states. And they were just wonderful to me. So I pause and pay tribute to two giants of EMS that their names probably someday won't mean as much to young people as they do here, but live on in all of our memories and in the memories of those who work together with them. So just if you're listening and you knew these ladies, or Bill, if you're out there and you're listening to this, know that we miss her a great deal. And both these ladies, just deserve all of the honor and memorial that we can provide to them. And Ed, I'm going to seg right over to you because I know you have some words that you want to say about the National EMS Memorial.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck, and thanks for sharing those stories, those personal relationships, but professional giants. We all know those folks. We have those people in our past that helped us and helped the folks around us sort of grow into EMS professionals. And so very appropriate to talk about that. I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you a little bit about a new program of the National EMS Memorial Service. So many of our listeners know this, but for those who don't, there is one entity that's recognized by Congress to memorialize those of our profession who've died in the line of duty. So for more than 30 years, the National EMS Memorial Service and the volunteers that really are the heart and soul of the organization have been recognizing those who have died in the line of duty, doing what they love and taking care of others. And so, the challenge for that is funding. And there's a number of folks here in Pennsylvania and elsewhere around the country, the folks who do the National EMS Memorial Bike Ride and others who have been a part of this effort for decades to continue to carry on the Weekend of Honor ceremonies, recognizing those folks and helping their families and colleagues celebrate and remember them. But it's expensive to do every year. It costs several $100,000 every year to carry out the service and really fund the folks, the family members, to come to celebrate their loved ones. So the National EMS Memorial Service started a new program this year. It's called Remembership. And what it is it's an opportunity for you to go online and sign up and donate less than $10 a month. It's $9.99 a month. And if people around the profession, if you think about it, it's one less cup of Starbucks coffee a month, right? It's nothing. But it gives us an opportunity to honor those. And our friends at eServices who are, of EMS, have donated their services to actually do the online payment portal. So it's very easy. If you go over to the National EMS Memorial Service website, you'll see a banner up top for membership. If you click into that and get down to the bottom, you can log in and you can set up your payment every month, and it's well worth it. And if you've not been to the memorial service, if you've not gone and recognized those, and unfortunately, we in Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth has suffered its fair share of losses, but also many of our clients around the country, we've had, unfortunately for the last 5 or 6 years, a client represented there as well. And, it's a wonderful opportunity for the friends and family to celebrate. So if you get a chance to go, please go, pay respects. It's down in Washington, D.C. every year. But anyway, if you think about it, if you get a chance, go onto the website and think about giving that $10 a month. to help support the service. So thanks for
And
listening. Appreciate that. And Chuck, thanks for sharing that
And I
story.
can concur about if you ever get a chance to go to the memorial service, it is incredibly emotional. I participate with the National EMS Memorial Bike Ride, and I've done the Weekend of Honor a couple of times. And luckily, not luckily, but there's a lot of times where the family of the EMS provider has not been there, but the last 2 times the family has been there, and to get the chance to actually talk to the family. And I mean, these are real people who have,
Yep.
you know, families and lives, and it's just important that they be remembered. And so it is an incredibly emotional weekend, but incredibly worth it. And I like this remembership thing. I'm writing it down because I'm like, can I put somebody's name in there? Like,
Yep.
can I donate in Nora's honor, or,
You sure can.
Right. Yeah,
something like
exactly.
that? I think
Yeah,
that's
sure can.
fabulous.
Yeah, talk about one of the giants
I know.
in our community, right? We've
Absolutely.
lost some incredible people.
And
Yeah.
Well, and we just lost Rich Kelly too. It's
Yeah.
Yeah,
Center
I went to his
Center County.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
last week or week. Such
Thursday
again
last week.
another giant. So many online tributes. What I notice is how he taught. You know, and the influence, the ripple effect. We
Yeah.
don't realize, you know, and helping younger people understand what we do, and so you know, it'd be sorely missed. That was a shock for sure.
The room was packed, and I heard the night before for visitation, there was a 2.5-hour wait. So what a wonderful send-off
What a
for a
wonderful tribute.
really good
Yeah.
person.
absolutely.
And for those of you that are listening and don't know, in Pennsylvania, Rich was the assistant director. Am I right at
Mount Nittany Medical Center.
Mount Nittany Medical
yes.
Center, which is
He was
in
the director, right?
Happy Valley, Penn State, out in State College. It's the hospital ALS EMS service out there. And Rich had been a flight medic for many years in a couple different flight programs, Stat Medevac, Geisinger's Life Flight Program, 2 of them. So for those of you who don't know, out of state, Rich was a very large impact on the central part of Pennsylvania.
Tough. We tend to lose them, and I think you know, these are challenging times, and they're only made worse by losing good people like Rich and the ladies that you spoke of, Chuck. And sadly, it's going to continue to occur, and we all know that it's part of the profession. And I think I'd like to have Heather back at some point soon, provided she'd come.
Absolutely.
And talk to us, because within our own state, we have a very, very good, strong working group that cares for those that are lost in the line of duty. And among other things, they do their best to take care of those families, and it's the Pennsylvania EMS Providers Foundation. We're not going to jump in that today, but Heather, if you would like to come back, we can surely give you the floor again.
I would love to.
Great, thank you. Drink some coffee, and we'll and you know, come on back with us. I know it's tough to tolerate us for this period of time, but we'd love to have you back. And I think today's session was very good. Good folks. I think we brought a lot of information forth. I sat here, some of these shows that we do, it's great conversation. It's good banter back and forth. There's good information exchange, but today was exceptional.
And Gary, Heather, will you repeat your email address?
Email,
again?
please. Yep.
I think that would be, you know, for anybody that wants to contact her about the yoga, or if you have questions about the Medicaid adjustment, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. It's HSHARAR1023@gmail.com.
Yep.
Very good.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me talk about yoga. I could talk about that forever.
That was great.
You guys were all mesmerized. Like, you're all.
Yeah, I was like, wow, this is great stuff.
Hey, I get more. You guys pay more attention to this than when I'm out talking about reimbursement issues. People's eyes start to glaze over.
Yeah, Heather, this goes under the category. Even a blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then.
Yes.
Right, exactly. You got that right.
Right.
And Chuck, I also want to echo your sentiments. I mean, it's easy for us, excuse my French, from an EMS organizational standpoint, to sit around and bitch about dollars and cents and everything like that. join the darn Ambulance Association of Pennsylvania. Put your money where your mouth is. It's pennies over the course of a year, and it pays off tenfold to be a member of this organization.
Yep.
It's one concert voice in unison, and we all need to have that if this industry is going to move forward, not only in Pennsylvania, but across the United States.
Wherever you may be, right?
Yes,
Wherever you
that's
may
exactly
be.
right.
And participate. Don't just send your money. Participate. Get on a committee. Volunteer your time. Meet your legislators. Know who they are. Develop those relationships. Very important.
Yep. As a sidebar, about a year or so ago, Heather asked me to be a trustee on the Pennsylvania EMS Providers Foundation. One of the best things I've ever done. Just so rewarding, and it's a great thing. And again, we'll have you back to talk about that at some points very soon, if you'd like.
Absolutely.
So with that, I will thank each of you for coming today and bringing up some great information, some great tributes. Very much apprecited. It's February here. Hopefully we're turning the corner towards spring. The days are getting a little bit longer out there. We're still having some snow flying here and there, but well, at least we are up here in the Northeast, Ed.
Yeah.
But overall, I think we may have had a pretty darn mild winter up here in good old PA. So I will tell all of our folks who listen, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. And then the key word here is be safe out here, just so you know. Anyway, so so all my colleagues are joining us today, and for those of you at home, I will simply say, hey,
Be safe.
Safe out there.